Have you ever wondered why God made Moses climb up a mountain to get the Torah? Wouldn't it have been just as meaningful to find a beautiful, inspiring location along the shore of an ocean or in a lush green valley? Somewhere that didn't involve so much physical exertion, so much schlepping. In her book, God in the Wilderness, Rabbi Jamie Korngold, aka the Adventure Rabbi, tells how she asked a group of rabbinical students that very same question while leading them on a grueling hike up Green Mountain, whose peak would give them sweeping views of Boulder, Colorado. One of her students, Evan, sweating and struggling up the trail, suggested because God figured Moses would be so out of breath from the climb that he wouldn't be able to say no thanks and refuse the commandments. Rabbi Korngold was looking for an answer about how, when you put effort into something, it becomes more valuable to you. But Evan's words rang true as well. She writes, the physical exertion of the desert climb, coupled with the stark desert beauty, helped Moses to arrive spiritually and emotionally in a place beyond internal chatter, a place beyond rationalization or explanation. He reached the top in a state we often call awe, when you open your mouth to describe what's happening, and the only thing you can say is, wow. That's because the peak of a mountain can provide not just spectacular views, but can captivate you, minimize distractions, and focus your thoughts. Maybe this explains the unusual wording in the command to Moses to climb up the mountain to receive the tablets. In this week's Parshat, Mishpatim, we read, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, God said to Moshe, Ale Elai Hahara Veheye Sham. Come up to me on the mountain and be there. Well, of course he'd be on the mountaintop once he climbed up. Where else would he be? Well, his body would certainly be there, but would his mind, would his heart and soul also be there? Being there isn't only about arriving somewhere geographically. It's about being attuned emotionally and spiritually to where you are. The Kotzker Rebbe was also intrigued by God's invitation, Ale Elai Hahara Veheye Sham, come up to me on the mountain and be there. The goal, he taught, is not merely to ascend, but also to be there, to be actually present there and nowhere else, and not to be going up and down at the same time. I thought about that line a lot, not to be going up and down at the same time. I think he meant that we shouldn't be in one place with our bodies and in another with our minds. In life's most sacred and precious moments, we should be all in, fully aware, attentive, and engaged. But the phrase, not to be going up and down at the same time, raises another image, that of the slippery slope. Here's where I diverge from the Kotzker Rebbe to choose another trail that I believe will get me to the same summit. When I think about why the Torah was given on the top of a mountain, it's because climbing a mountain is really hard work. As an experienced hiker, I know that firsthand. An incline, a surface slick from rain or gravel, an unstable rock. If you are going to hike up a mountain, you need to be prepared for some risky terrain, even some setbacks here or there. You need to expect that you may lose your footing for a second, or you may lose the trail for a little while. You need courage and confidence that you can make it to the top, that you can endure moments of doubt and uncertainty that are part of the challenge to aim and reach high. That's a powerful metaphor for Torah. Living a life of deep Jewish commitment means carefully but courageously exploring what our Jewish beliefs and values want of us in a particular scenario, a particular relationship, or a particular generation. It means negotiating the sometimes competing demands of an ancient tradition and a fast-changing world. It means doing the hard work of balancing our desire for freedom with our yearning to belong, of tempering our instinct to judge with our capacity to love. It means recognizing that the path isn't always clear, that there are both risks and rewards in our choices. They need to be carefully calibrated. That sometimes moving forward might require taking a step back. It is not a walk in the park. It is a grueling hike up a mountain. For this reason, Moses was summoned to scale Mount Sinai, to model for us how to meet the challenge of encountering the divine and living a life of holiness. Moses teaches us that the slippery slope is nothing to fear, that it's the best and the only way up. Now, having made the difficult trek, we might have expected that Moses' reward would have been some mystical, magical, mysterious interaction with God. Instead, as our Parsha recounts, he hears this: "Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and undermine the pleas of those who are in the right." And this: "When someone starts a fire and it spreads to their neighbor's field and burns their grain, the one who started the fire must make restitution." And this: "An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for a foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise." Moses climbs and sweats and stumbles to the top of Mount Sinai to meet God, reaching the ultimate spiritual heights. And the great revelation awaiting him is not the secrets of the universe or the meaning of life, but rather instructions on how to be a mensch and how to live peacefully with other people. There are, no doubt, exceptional and laudable values conveyed in the Torah's dictates around fairness and compassion, and in the sages' interpretations of them. The essence of Moses' encounter in our Parsha scene atop Mount Sinai is a code for social justice and civic responsibility, a feature of every society, ancient and modern, religious and secular. When you encounter your enemy's animal wandering and lost, you must take it back to them. Could this be the message that Alex Honnold heard from the universe when he scaled El Capitan in Yosemite? Yet this is precisely the distinctiveness of Judaism's sacred teachings. Observing religious rituals like Shabbat and prayer, Yom Tov and Kashrut are one approach to encountering the divine. And observing the Torah's rules about treating each other with respect, compassion, humility is another equally holy and equally demanding approach to spirituality. There was a time when this message was more keenly felt among our communities. In the generations prior to the emancipation of European Jews in the late 18th century, before we were integrated into the larger social, judicial, and political systems in which we lived, interpersonal disputes, such as someone's animal goring another's, or someone losing or damaging an item they were asked to watch over for someone else, those were resolved by the rabbinical courts and the halachic experts in any given town. Their wisdom and authority extended to every aspect of life, reinforcing this message that holiness is to be discovered and sustained in even our most mundane experiences and concerns. In the wake of Jewish emancipation, as more and more of our daily activities and interests were woven into the fabric of the general society around us, the scope of rabbinic authority became more and more limited to religious matters. When we compare the contents of responsa literature from the centuries prior to emancipation to those following, the shift in focus is dramatic. Whereas before, rabbis would answer queries about all kinds of issues relating to neighborly and business disputes, after emancipation, the halachic questions, for the most part, are addressed to matters of ritual and family law. It's true that for many decades now, the Jewish call to tikkun olam, to repair the world, has motivated many of us to do more, to feed the hungry, to shelter the homeless, and to even recycle and compost to help preserve our imperiled planet. But few of us consider the halachic and spiritual implications of the ways in which we shop, pay our employees, or even listen to music. In a few weeks, I'll be starting a series with you called Everyday Ethics, in which, through the prism of Jewish values and wisdom, we'll examine some of the basic choices we make every single day, from whether we log on to someone else's Wi-Fi, to when we break someone's confidence or tell a white lie, to how we divide our assets in our wills. I hope you'll join me. This reframing of our spiritual consciousness is the gift of Parshat Mishpatim, reminding us to seek God's holiness or meaning, not only by looking above or within us, but also by looking directly at one another and taking responsibility for one another's well-being. It's here too that the slippery slope beckons. The work of finding our way to the most ethical expressions of our commitments to each other, to a world of justice and healing, is arduous. We know well that life is not always clear-cut. We know that the road to morality isn't always a straight shot, but can often be winding and confusing. We often have to contend with competing needs and limited resources, with long-term goals and immediate crises. Too often, the slippery slope is cited as a reason not to respond to one situation because of the potential impact upon other situations that may arise. I can't give this homeless person on my corner cash because they'll just use it to buy drugs or alcohol and sink into deeper trouble. Or they'll start asking me for cash every single day, which I can't afford to give them. But they're hungry now. They're cold now. Might they use their money for things you consider bad for them? Maybe. Might they use it to buy themselves a hot coffee and a sandwich? Maybe. Does the way someone potentially behaves in the future absolve me of my responsibility to them in the present? The slippery slope calls us to find our footing in the moment, knowing that it might lead us to more unstable ground, but that it might not. It might lead to short-term discomfort, but to longer-term safety. Keep your eye on the summit, but your feet on the ground. This same tension looms in our choices that shape our religious and ritual lives. The slippery slope is often summoned as a justification to avoid innovation in Jewish law. We can't ordain women as rabbis, some protested, because the next thing you know, we'll be ordaining gay people. In my humble opinion, that risk was definitely worth taking. But with other issues, it might seem less clear. We can't return to observing one day of Yom Tov because then there'll be no respect for Yom Tov at all. We can't label plant-based, pork-seasoned, vegetarian meat as kosher pork because then there'll be fewer ways to distinguish Jews from other people. And no, neither of these would lead to mixed dancing. The most revered rabbinic leaders in our tradition were and are those who don't fear the slippery slope, but who embrace it. Those who understand that the road to authenticity is sometimes paved with uneven and uncertain stones, which we have no choice but to cross if we wish to be on this journey. Those who recognize that authenticity isn't only about the precise image in your viewfinder when you're standing on the peak, but that it is also about the sincerity and intention with which you made the effort to get there. Every single day, the call, Alei Elai Hahara Veheye Sham, come up to me on the mountain and be there, goes out to us, no matter where or who we are. Every day we are challenged to invest our efforts to live purposeful lives and to build meaningful relationships, human and divine, with a deep sense of awareness of the love and the beauty, the struggle and the pain, and above all, the gratitude that makes us human. Sometimes, no matter how hard we work at it, no matter how high and incredible the view we achieve, we may feel we've arrived on the outside, but that we're not quite there on the inside. We're not truly present. Other times we may realize that we have yet to scale the heights that we've set for ourselves, but we are nonetheless deeply present to the scenery around us, the people and the communities, the art and the music, the spirit and nature that surround us. And they inspire us to take one more step. As Alex Honnold said in Free Solo, there's a constant tension in climbing and really all exploration between pushing yourself into the unknown, but trying not to push too far. The best any of us can do, he said, is to tread that line carefully. Well said. The best any of us can do, the best any of us can help each other do in our search for the unknowable one, the unknowable Holy One that lives within and between us, is to, like Moses himself, climb the slippery slope. Shabbat Shalom.